recorded.
Ooh, yikes. Turn that off.
Is that a different person?
Are you all set? Are we good?
Are you ready? Are you ready to go?
Okay, great. I will gavel in the September Ways and Means Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Sims,
Here.
Alderman Gould,
Here.
Alderman Shelton,
Here.
Alderwoman Tice. Here. All members present.
Great. Item 2 on the agenda is approval or amendment of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to be made? Any objection to approving by acclamation? All right, it'll be so approved. There are no announcements, appointments, proclamations, or recognitions. Item number 4 is the report of the committee chair and alderman. I have no report. Alderman Gould.
No report.
Alderman Shelton.
No report.
Alderwoman Tice.
No report.
All right, item 5 on the agenda is City Administrator Report. 5A is the fiscal year 2023 annual process tentative calendar.
Thank you, Alderwoman Sims. In board docs, we have proposed additional meetings for your consideration. So the regular meeting in the month of October is October 6th. And then 2 additional meetings, if your schedules would allow it, October 20th and October 27th. And then we would present the budget at the November 3rd meeting, and then it would go to the Board of Aldermen, the second meeting in November. So we're about a month ahead based on this schedule. Hopefully we are able to stick to it. So for your consideration are the October 20th, 27th dates.
So so the 6th is regular. I'm available on the 20th and the 27th. Will that work for the committee?
I am not available on the 20th, but I am available on the 27th.
Is there another time the week of the 17th that might work? And I know I've said this before, if I don't like having meetings just to have meetings, I like to get it on the calendar. If we make good work, we don't have to have them. But I know my calendar fills up, so I just want to get it penciled in.
So Kelly suggested these dates. What do you want to do, Kelly? Look at the calendar and
How
see if
about
we
look
can
at
come
the
up with another date?
calendar, and I'll send you some information about potential other dates, since the 20th doesn't work.
If we looked at the week of the 17th, just for your I'm not going to make you pick a date, but I can tell you that, I can do the 18th and 19th.
I can too.
So the 18th and 19th would work.
19th is open for me.
Ugh.
All right, well.
Yeah.
So was the 19th the date that worked for everybody?
No,
No. Was the 18th that
no,
worked?
none of those were.
Okay, all right, so the week of the 10th.
Well,
this is,
hang on. I mean, I can make the 20th and the 18th work. I have something that I'd be leaving to come here to do, but that's okay. I mean, if it works for everybody else, I don't want to hold that up. I mean, that's not.
does the 18th work?
Works for me.
Okay, the 18th would work for me. Then I feel like this is a scheduling conference where we're setting
Yeah.
up deposition dates. So the week of, let's just, because I don't know if that's going to work for other people. So we got the 18th is all good for the committee.
Okay.
The week of the 10th, in case the 18th doesn't work, so we don't have to come back and do this again. I'm available the 11th, the 12th, the 13th.
I'll jump in. I'm out of town Wednesday through that whole weekend, so
So if
Monday
needed.
and Tuesday. Or
I can do the 11th, or
10th is
10th is Columbus Day, but
So
fine. I mean,
the 11th,
the 10th,
is the 11th an available day for you?
It'll be exact same situation. So yeah, I'll make adjustments as needed.
The 18th appears to be open on the calendar do we want to just try and schedule that for the 18th?
If it's available, I say strike while I've got yeses.
Okay, let's just do that.
So, all right, so we've got the 6th, the 18th, and then Was the 27th an okay day? Have we not reached that one yet? I can't even remember what I said
Okay
5
for
minutes
me.
ago. Okay. All right, great. So we got that. Yes. And would those be starting at 5:30? Okay. Everyone for your willingness to make additional time. And like I said, if we don't need to have those meetings, we'll cancel. All right, were there additional items in that?
The next item would be the continuation of the discussion regarding the compensation plan report and implementation cost. At the request of this committee, we were asked to present to the Public Safety Committee, the two positions that have been added to the compensation plan, the firefighter lieutenant and a firefighter engineer, and the promotions to lieutenant for sergeants in the police department. And we have had that discussion with public safety, and they are in support of those two staying on the compensation plan. So we have Linda Higby online in case you all have any additional questions, but the compensation is back before you for further discussion, recommendation, next steps.
So are you specific to the police and fire? Or are we, I mean, I would
All
break-
of it.
break this off, or
All
or
of it.
do you want to, because I know, I think there are questions generally.
You could do uniform first and then
Yeah, I mean, does
non-uniform,
that-
however you want
I
to do
mean,
it.
I'm just trying to go about this in an organized fashion. I mean, if I know at the last meeting, if we're focused on uniform, I just wanted to hear a public safety perspective, and it's not lost on me that I sit on that committee. So, I mean, having had an affirmative, an endorsement, is there additional discussion just on that topic alone, or any questions that you have regarding that recommendation for the uniform? Okay, so should we move on to a next topic, or do you need us to approve that, or
Yes, because this needs to go to the board.
are we wanting to, I mean, is that gonna be something that we do piecemeal, or,
No, it goes together.
okay, but in terms of discussing tonight, if there are other questions with regards to other compensation recommendations, I'm
Yes.
just wanting to take up the
Yes.
discussion.
Can we just, and even for,
Like-
for the benefit of those who might be watching in the public, can we just do a high level of all that's in front of us here that we are deciding on?
Linda?
Sure. If you will recall, the last time we met, one of the things that we had talked about was not just the addition of those positions, but also a stipend to go with the engineering role in public safety as well. And then we also had a number of positions that, based on the market levels, were requiring a classification change upward. And so those are also before you as a recommendation as well. And that is movement of the maintenance workers, which have had an extreme uptick in the market, the sanitation drivers, the mechanic, the inspector role, and also your HR manager are before you in terms of changing those classifications. They are all going upward. We are recommending that your ranges be adjusted by 5.7%, in addition to those 5 jobs changing classification as well. We did not do your cost. That was done internally, so I don't have cost for you, but rather just discussion relative to what's going on in the marketplace right now. Specific questions, again, we had left you with some next steps, of which you have done. You went to your public safety committee, and at least what I'm hearing right now is that you have an approval for that stipend for your engineer, the additional classification of a police lieutenant, and then also the a lieutenant in the police department. So with that, those changes, again, we're now moving into more of the non-uniform, and that's where we were just covering the 5 classifications that we think need to go up, in addition to your ranges going up by almost 6%. Again, just reflective of the market and the ability to hire right now within your local market.
Recording in progress.
I'm sorry, I got an echo, but not a question.
I'm trying to put the power.
Remember, hover up. Want me to come?
Okay. Bola, I was on slide 12 just as a review in terms of the non-uniform and what we were requesting or recommending for you.
Like,
Want me to talk?
run my mouth.
Just
Hot
as a
mic,
reminder,
hot
while you're
mic.
trying to get this up, there were no philosophy changes or discussions along those lines this year. We stayed with the same set of comparators, same philosophy in just looking at your comparator group. The big change, I think, for us is that we actually did the matching in-house and had access to all of their classifications of your comparators as well as their job descriptions.
Sure. Or do you talk? Okay, so are there additional questions as to the compensation plan that's being proposed here, Alderwoman Tice?
So in general, I think we need to do this. I think the economy has drastically changed since we did this even, a few months back. And I think we need to do this to stay competitive and be fair to our employees. I do have a couple of sort of specific questions, I think, for Jason. And I also like color-coded Excel spreadsheets, so I was looking at your color-coded Excel spreadsheets, and I noticed a couple of the ones that were highlighted, specifically the sanitation laborer and the horticulturist. They each stayed at the same grade, but went or down a step. So I don't know if that is just a typo, but like the sanitation laborer went from 612 to 611. And the horticulturist went from 12.3 to 12.2, which.
Correct. So the reason for that is the way that we have always done our process when we've implemented it is the employee would go to the next appropriate step to stay on a step, not necessarily the same step that they're at. So with the advent of the grid moving so drastically this year, the 5.7%, I believe, is what Ms. Higbee had indicated, the next appropriate step for them to go to would be in the case of like the laborer, he actually goes down a step, but he's receiving a rate increase, if that makes sense.
Does.
Because the grid itself is moving.
Right, but I guess if the grid's moving, doesn't that mean that the pay scale for that job is moving?
Yes, and again, that individual is still receiving a rate increase. We saw a similar thing on the firefighter side with the fire captain. Their rate went up slightly in the last process by about $700 or $800. This time it went up significantly, and as such, all three of those captains, as an example, were currently capped. They will go to the next appropriate step, which would actually take them down a step, but give them room for advancement as time goes on. So the same is true for those two positions that you had highlighted.
Other questions?
I would just
Alderman
make
Shelton?
comment that I agree with Alderwoman Tice that, we spent a lot of time discussing the philosophy. And I know that even predates me that the philosophy was a big discussion, and, this is our philosophy, and part of what Linda does is figure out with the market that this is where it needs to move. And, I think we've had a lot of conversations here about how we're starting to get not competitive in some areas. So I think it's important that we try and follow with the times and approve this. Thank you.
Alderman Gould?
Yeah, I certainly agree 100% with, obviously, the non-uniform is where we're hurting a lot, and we need to do those things. As far as the uniform shifts and classifications go, we have a public safety committee for a reason, and if they say that it's of the affirmative, that they believe structurally that's the right thing to do, then I think as long as we go through the budget process and we're able to afford that as a budget, then I don't see why we wouldn't explore that. So, I mean, if you both feel confident that moving forward, we can have a balanced budget with that, then, well, I know you were not there yet, but that's what I'm saying. Guidance-wise, I think it's one of those that we should support keeping the progress going.
Are there further questions? I guess at this point, I'd entertain a motion to approve the recommended compensation implementation as set out in the meeting materials and to forward on to the Board of Aldermen for consideration.
So moved.
All right, we've got a first by Alderwoman Tice and a second by Alderman Shelton. Is there any further discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call.
Chairwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
Yes.
Alderman Shelton,
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Motion carries by 4-0.
Great, thank you. Moving on down the line. Thank you, Linda. That was
Okay, I'll sign off.
far less exhaustive than
Than last year.
last year. All right, item 6A is item 6 is department report. 6A is the progress report of the 2021 audit. Who is taking the lead on that?
Andrew is online.
I thought
He's
I'd-
here.
Yep.
Yes, I received a lot of supporting documentation and information from Robin and her team over the last 24 hours. We're making a lot of progress and in a good position to be done by the September 20th S&P due date. I
So,
don't know if there's any further questions.
20th.
so as far as you've got everything you need from the city, is that right?
Yeah, so we've gotten the final trial balance yesterday, and then we've gotten a lot of supporting documentation to back up property taxes. And we've gotten, the lion's share of everything that we need. The city's been extremely responsive over the last 24 to 48 hours, so that's putting us in a good position.
And Alderman Gould?
Well, no, you said September 20th. In the document we have says September 16 finalized audit. Does that mean it's finalized to go, the process of finalizing at the 16th to go to the 20th? Or what's the 20th?
So the 20th is my date, which means that we should have it before the 20th. So if you remember, Standard & Poor's removed the city's ratings of our debt issuance. And a lot of the investors who hold that debt have been calling the city, emailing the city, calling S&P. And so earlier this week, I received an email from their Dallas office asking if the city would like to have them reinstate the rating. And we would. What has been the holdout has been the 21 audit. We can't go forward with that process because they're going to ask for that. And so they've asked me for some information that we've already posted to the EMMA, E-M-M-A website on the 20 audit and other, they're considered material findings. And what that means is that the city has gone through other routes to get lease agreements, financing agreements with other financial institutions. We got to disclose all of that. But the missing piece is the 21 audit. And so the 90-day clock started ticking when they removed the rating. So now we have from now till the 20th for them to complete their review, their analysis, and reinstate it. So the final audit, they will not accept a draft. The final audit has to be in hand to them before that 20th. It can't be handed to them on the 20th, otherwise we're back where we were before.
So that's why in here it says finalized audit to you by the 16th.
Right.
Which then allows you enough time to get it submitted by
Exactly.
the deadline. Okay.
Right.
And Andrew, is the 16th a day you can work with? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to work a lot between now and then, but I'm gonna push to get it done.
Okay, thank you.
And just because I'm mailbox rule, is that something that can be uploaded electronically, or do you have to FedEx it?
No,
or
we upload
courier
it.
it over?
We upload it to them, we upload it to Emma. Yeah, it's all digital.
Okay. Oh, Alderwoman Tice?
Can I ask another question? Could we maybe in January put on our agenda what the timing for the 2022 audit is so that we are not talking about it a year from now?
Sure. What do you mean by timing?
Well, just like, sort of like what we did with the budget, just
Oh, a calendar.
like a calendar and let
Sure.
us know what the plans are for the 2022 audit and just sort of stay on top of it earlier. So
Okay.
it seems like the entire time I've been on the board, it's been late, and so it'd be nice just for our committee to stay on top of that.
Okay.
But going forward, as we,
And for your understanding, I mean, Robin and I have talked through all the things that need to happen to ensure that this doesn't occur going forward. We have a pretty strong game plan as to how to execute that and have the audit done in a much, much faster time frame now. So, we'll obviously give you dates whenever you need them, but I can reassure you that this won't be occurring in the future.
Thank you.
music to my ears.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, I don't see anything. Thank you, Andrew. Item 6B is public hearing setting for the property tax rates.
Good evening. So this is a process that we go through annually. We have posted the public notice that the hearing will be September 19th during the Board of Aldermen meeting regarding the 2022 property tax rates. The information is uploaded in board docs, and just high level, there has been, the assessed values increased slightly for residential property in 2021. Commercial property decreased by 4%, while personal property had a significant increase of almost 24%. So for the general fund, library, and the pension fund, the estimated tax revenues are $348,012, $933,470, and $1,220,795 respectively, and those will be budgeted accordingly for 2023. Any questions?
Any information as to why the commercial tax went down?
Probably due to protesting. That happens unfailingly. So by the time the board, so we will have a first reading on the 6th. We'll have a second reading on the 19th. And hopefully by the 19th, the businesses or property owners that are protesting their value will have had those values adjudicated, so we'll know what the final value is, and we might see it go back up, or it might stay the same. It just depends on how successful they are. That's usually indicative of what's going on here.
Alderman Gould?
I mean, same kind of question. How did the personal property get raised so significantly, do you think?
A lot of that has to do with the current economy and the valuation of property, especially used automobiles right now.
Oh, because they're high demand and.
Yes.
Right, okay, understood.
Other questions? All right, seeing none, do you need any action from us, or is that? so-
Recommendation to the board.
I have a just general education question. I mean, this seems like it's coming from the county or and state, so it's sort of, you kind of accept it, right? I mean, there's, is there any cases where the board says, nope, we don't want to adjust it, like,
Says what? We don't, what adjusted?
we want to accept the adjustment? Like, I don't understand, how this just seems kind of like, yes, you go forward
It
with
is a
right?
process. The only way the adjustment happens is if you protest.
Okay,
And typically, I don't know, the municipalities would protest, it's the property owners.
property owners protesting their own, so, yep, okay. That's what I thought, I just wanted to make sure.
I have a question for the motion. So, Bo, you had said September 6th, and this has September 19th.
Oh, excuse me, September 19th.
Is there a reason we don't do it on the 6th, or?
It's because we need 15 days before the meeting to post the notice.
Okay.
Other questions? All right, I'll Chair would entertain a motion to approve the proposed 2022 property tax rates as set out in the materials and to be submitted to the full Board of Aldermen for their approval.
Second.
We've got a first and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
Yes,
Alderman Shelton,
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes, sorry, yes. Sorry.
Motion carries 4-0.
Great, thank you. So that moves us on to item 6C, which is the 2023 proposed budget presentation of the 2023 revenue projections and the 2022 financial statement reports through July 31, 2022.
I'll present a combined presentation tonight for your listening pleasure. So I have the proposed revenues for 2023. We're going to touch on some of the bigger revenue receipts for the city. And we had a little education where we learned some things. So I'll start with the financial institution tax. That is a tax that annually banks and other financial institutions pay 7% tax on their net income. So that's where that comes from. The city receives that once a year. We got our receipt in June of this year for about $34,000. There's really no way to estimate what we'll receive annually. So for 2023, we wanted to be conservative. So our proposed revenue for that line is $14,403.
That's just to be conservative, nothing, I mean, to think that we're gonna take a 46% haircut. I mean,
Correct.
I'm
Yes.
fine, but.
So if you go back and you look, and a lot of these projections are based upon historic trends. So we look at a time frame that is pre-COVID. And so if you look at 2019, that's the best indicator along with 2021. So you have the pre-COVID number and you have a number after the height and the start of the pandemic. And that 14,000 number is right there. So that's, that's how that projection was made. The next line, sales tax. Last month, I promised that I would look for a more definitive answer from the state and neighboring communities as to why the city received the $2.3 million. And the answer is, due to the economy, inflation, and supply chain issues, the cost of everything has increased. And this has caused an increase to our benefit in that sales tax line. So we're projecting to be conservative again. Even though our receipts through the end of July are $6.8 million, conservatively, we are projecting $5.8 million. This is very...
I think we got a question.
Oh,
So
okay,
just a
sorry.
quick question, just to make sure I'm clear on this. So we had originally thought that maybe that there was something incorrect with the calculation, but then we touched base with the state and they said, it's correct, you're just benefiting.
Right. The state said that it looks good. And so BOLA did some communication with neighboring communities and found that it's the economy. So to be conservative again, we're proposing 5.8, but this is the start of the revenue projection process. So we may amend the number as we go through the process, and that's for all lines. The next line, county public safety tax, we're projecting a almost 5.5% budget change over the number for 2022, and that's just based upon historic trends. The use tax. This tax is imposed directly on a person. So for tangible goods, personal properties, things of that nature. So July 31st of this year, through July 31st of this year, the city has received $573,403 in use tax. Conservative estimate to finish 2022 is $750,000. Because this tax performed so well, we are projecting revenues for 2023 with a 125% increase.
And that number jumped out. I mean, that's great. But I know our approach is to be conservative and knowing that, like, you feel comfortable with saying, I mean, I know it's a relatively new tax, but that it's gonna, that we'll, even on a conservative estimate, say that we're gonna have a 225 increase in that tax. I mean, that's fantastic, but I just wanna make sure when they pull this video down the road that we spent a little time on that.
It's my chance to backtrack. We have always been told that what we started off with, I think 290, I can't find it, 290. So this doesn't show the budget, but if you look at the budget book, we had been budgeting 290, and we were very conservative, even though Pat Kelly had talked to other communities that have had this in place for longer than we have, who have said maybe after the initial year, you're going to see it perform in a way that surprises you. And finally this year, we're seeing it perform in a way that surprises us. But we still want to be very conservative. And so by the time the budget is adopted, we will have had August, September numbers. So we'll be able to reflect on that and see whether we need to drop it or leave it as it is. So it's very fluid. And we're proceeding cautiously in terms of how, because since this is in the general fund, how we proceed with the expenditure part of the general fund. So thank you for the questions. We're being very conservative. We had a long discussion on this before we finally agreed to this number.
The next number I'll talk about is the state motor fuel tax. Disappointingly, this tax has not performed to date, in alignment with our 2022 budget. Some of the causes, gasoline increased, probably had less drivers on the road, more carpooling, bicycles when the weather was milder, people using rideshare services, and a lot of employees and workers working from home. So this tax is not performing as we expected. Because of that, you will see a decrease in the proposed budget for 2023 that is a almost 24% reduction from 2022. What was favorable about the line when we projected in 2022 was the fact that the state had a new motor fuel tax that would be phased in over 5 years starting this year. But because of the increase in oil prices, we don't see favorable revenues there. So to be conservative again, we've adjusted that line.
Alderman Tice?
I have a question. So I understand what the state motor fuel tax is, but the second line, the road and bridge tax.
Mhm.
What's the second line from the very top? After ad valorem, it's road
I see that. So
10.
I have this handy dandy guide from the state that tells us what each one of these is, so I don't have to memorize them. So I will answer your question. One second to find it.
So the state motor fuel tax is based on population. And then, have you found the road?
The road and bridge. Yes, ma'am.
We lost population?
We
mean-
saw some growth, 200 and, so we were 8,055 and we're now 8,230. So we saw some growth
Okay, but I guess just statewide. that
statewide. Well,
people
statewide,
aren't-
we,
There's not as much of a pool of the state motor tax, okay,
no.
okay. So then the road and bridge tax, where does that come from?
So the road bridge tax is St. Louis, it's taxes, it's residents to fund maintenance and construction of certain roads and bridges within each municipality. The county collects this on behalf of the city and distributes it to us at the end of each calendar year based on the city's valuation of its roads and bridges. So,
That's a county thing, okay. Is that in the grid that we just approved in the property tax? Like,
yes.
so that's a commercial, home, personal property tax?
It's a combination of all.
Okay,
Right.
comes out of there, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Bola. I'm sorry, that is a county tax. Comes from St. Louis County. Grouped together would be the utility franchise taxes. Overall, we are estimating revenues. We're estimating increased revenues in all those lines with the exception of the communications telephone tax. And that's based upon a lot of customers are not using landline telephones anymore. And that's pretty much the reason. We've seen a decrease in the amount of receipts. If you look where we stand at the end of July, we're at $98,642. Budget was $312,836. Based upon receipts received through July, the expectation is that we will only receive $283,689. So we lowered the proposed revenues for 2023 based upon that number.
If there's any increase that we receive, it's most likely going to be due to a class action lawsuit that municipalities have jointly participated on because some of these communications, cable companies, phone companies aren't collecting the proper franchise fees and remitting those to the cities. I think we reported about a month or two ago that there's this outstanding class action lawsuit with a phone provider, and we have prevailed. Typically, the city of Creve Coeur leads the effort, in handling these class action lawsuits. And so we reported, I don't remember the exact number, but we shared that with you at the last meeting. So when you see any kind of increase in it, it's resulting from those. And we have had maybe 3 or so since I've been here.
So I'm jumping ahead, but that's the reason the cable
Yes,
is. Okay.
right.
And the estimate for this year is not a mistake? The
No.
200, okay,
No, it's from them.
okay, thank you.
I want to go back to the cigarette tax. As you can see, there's a 1% change. That tax is flat. So that's the reason for the projection being at 1% from budget year to budget year. Liquor licenses. We are down from budget 2022 to proposed for 23 at 2.6%. The projections are pretty much flat over a period of time, and it's really based upon the current license holders' annual renewal fees. So as merchants come and go, that could change, but the number is just based upon what we have today through July of this year. Minor sources of revenue, well, let's talk about trash pickups, because we're almost 15% with our projections from year to year. So there's been a steady increase in the number of citizens requesting this service and healthy, strong receipt of revenues and collections. So that's why that line is showing a 15% increase. Intercity joint services, the student resource officer agreement with the Brentwood School District. We bill them 3 times a year and they pay timely. And that's the reason why we are looking at a 236% increase. So that line is based upon a compensation sharing with the school district in the city of Brentwood. So as salaries increase, so do the revenues for that particular line. Overall, we are projecting a 0.93% in revenues in the general fund. Yes.
So a specific question about the ambulance fees.
Yes.
Why is that such an increase?
Two reasons. Thank you for the question. The Missouri GEMT participation. We just finished fiscal year 2021. That was when we had the lowest amount of runs. So we have greatly increased our call volume since, and we anticipate that being a much larger reimbursement moving forward because of that downturn. And we are transporting more patients now than we were pre-COVID.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Question on the liquor licenses, is that, are we still waiting for some people to pay for the licenses, or are we, has everybody who is going to pay for the licenses paid, and so this might be a reduction of?
No, we are waiting for 4 merchants to complete the renewal process. Each merchant has a unique individual situation. I have been in contact with each merchant and trying to strongly encourage them to get all their required documentation in so that we can post it for board approval.
Okay.
The number that you see is based upon all current license holders paying the fee. Well, that have paid the fee, not those 4 outstanding, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yes.
Because the projection is made through 7/30. It's based upon historical, but it's also based upon what we've seen through the first 7 months of the year. So without that revenue being there for me to look at, even though I anticipate it, I can't report it. And because what if they don't comply?
Yeah, no, and that's why I was
So that's
asking.
the conservative principle.
I like that, thank you.
And I guess just from a high level to put a bow on it, even under conservative analysis, our general fund revenues we're
Going.
estimating just
Yes.
shy of 1%
Right.
increase.
Right.
Yes. So for the capital fund, this will be really quick and short. The adopted budget was 1.6 million. Through July 31st, we have received 1.6 million. And because we've only reported through 7 months of the year, and we still have not got into that heavy shopping season that occurs at the end of the year, we are estimating that we will finish 2022 with 2.9 million. So based upon that, we have a proposed increase of 6% from the adopted budget for 2022 and the proposed for 2023.
We want to mention that there is a transfer in, am I correct? Do you want to talk about what that intergovernmental revenue represents under capital?
Yes, I do. The intergovernmental revenue under capital is the $1 million transfer from the general fund to the capital improvement fund.
So this will go toward the payment of the debt, COPS debt.
Right, for the debt service.
Alderman Gould?
Can I back up one more to the previous tax discussion, general fund? Cablevision, is that correct? So, we're seeing a decrease, but we've taken a projection of an increase of 54.5%. Can you explain that?
Cable is, which one are you calling?
The Cablevision.
Communications?
Are you back to general?
Yeah, I'm back to general fund. Sorry, I had a question to go back. 4060, yes.
I see that.
Sorry, I just noticed that,
Yes,
was
yes,
made aware of it, and I want to make sure we're.
That is correct. As Bola stated, we did spend a lot of time discussing the projections. What you see here is, if you look at the trend, the past trend, where the receipts prior to the pandemic were higher, and then there was a dip in 2021, and so we lowered our number to 59,000, but we're close to meeting that number only through 7 months of the year. So we're estimating a higher amount based upon the 7 months and the additional 5 months. However, we did propose a compromise somewhere in between where we did not use the pre-COVID numbers, but something more in alignment with an increase over 2021 receipts, because that was the best information we had available. The revenues could still come in lower than the 280,000. That's just a mathematical guesstimate based upon receipts that have been received through the end of July.
I guess I misunderstood. I thought that was the lawsuit.
It's the lawsuit.
Okay, so
Yes.
then is the lawsuit, I'm jumping in.
No, go ahead,
I'm sorry.
please
So,
do.
and then is the lawsuit, are we also anticipating having some money coming in 23?
So it is the lawsuit, but now that they know that they're supposed to pay that.
Okay.
That's the factor.
Okay.
Yes. Does that answer your question, Alderman Gould?
I think so. Yeah, it's just kind of a
Yeah,
weird number.
it is a weird number, but because it's a bump we got because of the
And then we'll-
settlement.
yeah.
And so it'll increase a little bit, but it won't be as much because the settlement goes back over multiple years.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Okay, got it.
I can.
Sorry, that's,
Sorry. I looked at this, so I was gonna say, if you did the year-to-date, it would be 7481 a month, which times 12 is 89,772 for next year, and you projected 92,000, which if you're saying that some people are gonna collect more, that
Yes.
totally makes sense. So-
Right,
And it's
right.
just a few $1,000s, so we're spending a lot of time on
and I apologize for backing up.
$3,000.
but
That's all right.
Now we can move forward, I guess.
So we
right
were,
over the
we were
sales
talking about the capital, and I think this is a good opportunity, and maybe I'll put Eric on the spot to come help us talk about what we've done strategically in terms of COPS payment and making certain that each fund, are you prepared for that? This is me getting him back for what he did to me last night at the workshop. You're welcome.
Thank you. So I think and Bola can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the things that we were doing is we wanted to start with what we needed to make sure we had to pay for in the capital fund. So you're really looking at the COPS payment, other debt service, leases like the ambulance lease, the trash truck lease, things like that. And that totaled up to like $1.8 million. And so then we're looking at what all the requests from all the other departments are. And they're going to have to be some difficult choices because to get into a balanced budget, we're not going to be able to fund everything that has been requested. So we're going through that process right now.
But we wanted to make sure that we are spending a lot more time in determining what percentage of revenue from each fund that will go toward the payment of the COPS, the 2018 COPS. We're not waiting till the end to try to fudge it. So now we're like, okay, general fund will pay 35%. What is the percentage, do you know?
Yeah, it's 25% from the general fund, 25 from rec and stormwater, and 50 from capital.
To go toward servicing the debt.
And the nice
Because
thing
that
with
was the agreement, that's the language that's in the trust indentures for servicing that debt.
And the nice thing with doing that is we know year after year what the debt service is going to be for each fund, so we have that right up front.
Question?
Well, you didn't raise your hand. Like,
So, longer term, when Brentwood Bound is over and we have the ETSD, and assuming that revenue projections continue and we're collecting more tax than we need to service the 2019 COPS, can that additional revenue, I know it can be spent on other capital improvement things, or capital, or economic development things,
Right.
Could it also be used to service the 2018 COPS?
Cannot. We have an opinion on that already.
Okay. I may have asked that before, so I apologize if I have, but
I'll check my notes so that I don't misspeak.
Okay.
I think that question's been asked, but I don't believe we can. But you can use it for capital economic development. It's a very broad definition, but doesn't include debt.
okay, great. Thank you.
And so, that could possibly be a discussion for you all at a later date. Right now, we're taking the amount we need to service the debt, and the remainder is rolling into fund balance. And I think that number was shared last night. So it's growing, gradually. And at some point, the board should have a discussion. What do you want to spend that money on rather than just having it sit there? And do you want to start spending it now? I would guard against that until the Brentwood Bound project and the Destination Playground projects are done.
No more discussions, anything big right now.
Thank you. Robin?
Thanks, Eric. And Eric's fund is up after Economic Development Fund. So we have a 1% increase to Fund 41. We budgeted $3.4 million. Through July, we have $2.1 million. We are estimating to meet the budget number, and we are proposing a 1% increase, which is $3,462,038 for 2023. Stormwater Parks Fund, 8.8% increase. The adopted budget was $3.1 million. Through July, it's 1.9 in revenue, 1.9 million in revenue, with an estimate of 3.3 million to finish 2022. And we're proposing 3.4 million for 2023. Sewer Improvement Fund, all proposed revenue starting in 2023 is flat at $148,000. Through July, we have received $32,221 Adopted budget was 148,000. My estimate brings us a little bit short of the budget at 147,500. So that number was dropped to be conservative based upon receipts through July. Any questions?
Objection.
Thank you. So you probably don't want to hear about what happened with revenues for July because it pretty much aligns with our projections. The numbers that you see through July 31st are pretty much representative of my monthly variance analysis, but just really high level. I want to give you all this information for revenues for the general fund through July. They're extremely strong, stable, and steady in the first 7 months, and we have 20% overall for the general fund to collect through the end of the year, thanks to healthy revenues in the use tax, the general sales tax, as well as minor sources of revenue, which would be things like household pickups, the trash pickups, excuse me, fines, and liquor licenses. So, and the financial institution tax. I don't want to leave that out because that's included in our minor sources of revenue because it's a once a year receipt that the city gets. So that's Fund 10. For Fund 40, capital improvement, we have collected 50% of the revenues expected. We should be closer to 50%, so we're watching out for that line. The Economic Development Fund, we have 37% of revenues remaining to collect for the next 5 months. Stormwater parks, that number, the percentage is inflated by Brentwood bound. So we're still waiting on receipts that continue to come in from MSD and Great River Greenways. Those impact that line, but overall, of course, stormwater and parks performs very well with revenues. And in some categories, the receipts have exceeded what we expect, even with the minor sources, which includes things like Brentwood bound, dog park memberships, et cetera. And for the sewer improvement fund, we've only collected 78% of the, well, we have 78% remaining to collect, which is the justification for the lowering of the number in the prior presentation.
Alderman Gould.
Are there any risks of revenue for park permits or anything like that due to the storms and damage that we've received? Is that creating any issue moving forward that may have a lag?
No, I mean, we did have, I think we lost a weekend of revenue in the parks. We'll see some lost revenue in Field 1, but we're strong in other areas. So, and thanks for staff to be able to get stuff back up and running right away or as quickly as possible. So we're not, what we see is we're comfortable with.
Okay, good.
So I want to talk about expenses next. The general fund in administration, I'm sorry. The expenditures are in alignment with the budget allocation through the month of July, with 42.9% of the budget remaining for the next 5 months. The legislative line is starting to level out, so we're at 53.4%. At one point, it appeared that line item was overspending, but it has started to stabilize. Community relations, 72.9% of the budget are remaining there. Again, that overpayment for the election was reported in the last reporting period, so that's helping that line item. Municipal operations, that budget line has 38.7% of the budget remaining, and that's due to an increase in legal and accounting fees related to the 2020 and the 2021 audit. Fire, police are running around the 40% mark with their budget remaining. And all other funds are in alignment with the budget allocation. Some on target, some running a little bit below average, but overall, the total general fund has 43.4% of the budget remaining through July. 67.7 for the capital improvement fund is remaining, 71.8 for economic development fund, and in the 60% range for both stormwater parks and sewer improvement funds through July. If there are no questions, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 7, which is the consent agenda. 7A is the approval of the August 16th committee meeting minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review any changes to be made? Seeing none. Okay, those will stand approved. Item 8 on the agenda is old business. 8A is the Missouri Local Government Employee Retirement System, the loggers benefit issue. Who's Jason?
So if you guys recall at the July 12th Ways and Means Committee meeting, one of the things that I had asked would be that we had the opportunity to go to loggers to determine what the cost impact would be for us to switch our current plan, which is known as the L7 plan, to the L12 plan. A couple of things that I need to make sure that the board is aware of. Whenever a change like this is made, first and foremost, before it can be implemented formally, it needs to go before the public for a period of 45 days. And once it has been implemented, then you're in essence locked in for a period of 2 years where you could make any other type of change. The only aspect that we were looking at potentially changing, because you can change things like adding a rule of 80 or having employee contributions, things along those lines, was making the change to the ultimate benefit. One thing I want to make sure that is also pointed out is that this benefit would only be put in place for current and future employees. So employees currently drawing from loggers, this does not affect them. It's only people that are currently employed as of right now, and then those that we would potentially hire in the future. So as of today, you are looking at approximately 63 individuals that would be affected by this, 61 of whom are employees and 2 board members that are a participant to the plan. Anytime a plan like this goes into effect, we do obviously see a rate increase. However, we have seen consistent rate decreases over the past several years. So if you kind of take a step back and look at it in totality, the cost to implement this is relatively minimal in the grand scheme of things. There is an overall cost associated with it that would then be amortized, which then increases our rate for the period of the next 10 years, which is represented by that additional 3.5% of the rate that's in there. So the way that it would mean is that next year we were slated to have a contribution rate of 3.5%. If the board would be gracious enough to implement this, then that rate would go to 7% for next year. And a similar assessment would be on the subsequent 9 years unless we were to have paid it off prior to that.
Alderwoman Tice?
So I have multiple questions.
Sure.
So the first one is, I'm a little confused about this additional payment.
Okay.
So is this 60,000 a year, 66, whatever it is that like a catch-up payment to pay for what should have been paid over the
No.
past time to get it from the, so that there's enough money to pay the higher rate to our current staff?
I want to make sure that I answer your question appropriately and that I don't muddy the waters. So basically, with us taking our current rate of the 1.5%, the L7, and then increasing it to the 1.75, that additional increase of the 0.25 for our existing employee populace is what that number represents. So we are in essence saying we would like to move this plan to a higher rate. The cost of that currently is that $600,000, but again, it's amortized over the next 10 years.
Okay, so the cost to just move is 660,000.
Correct.
Then in addition.
No, it's not in addition. That 600,000 is represented by that $66,000 next year, and then the subsequent year and years after that.
Right, but if it's on a higher level plan, just assume that we paid the 660 all in one fell swoop.
Sure.
So we've paid that.
Then we would still be at the lower rate. Our contribution rate then comes back down.
So if you're paying 30,000 now, and you increase your rate to what is proposed, there's an incremental cost for that. So you can either pay that 600,000 for the new rate you have, which they're amortizing over 9 years, or you see that increase every year in your budget toward that. So it's like getting a loan, getting a car loan.
I guess I'm confused by the grid that they have on page 5 in the loggers report.
And the loggers rate?
So,
Okay?
Page 4?
Page 5.
page 5. So it looks like next year, if we don't do anything, we pay $92,000. Or, yeah, the payroll's 2.6, and we would pay 92.
That 3.5% represents that $92,000. The $66,000 was an incremental cost over this year because our rate next year is going down from what our rate is currently, if that makes sense. So this year, as an example, we're paying 4.5%. So based on this year's dollars, the incremental increase is 66,000. If we do nothing, our rate next year, instead of being the 4.5, is 3.5. So I felt it only fair to present it to the board, showing what the incremental cost would be to implement this, as opposed to, because the reduction plus that additional amount.
Okay, so I guess I'm just totally confused, because you're saying it's 66,000 extra a year, but like if you look at year 9, we would be paying 189,000, and then with the alternate new plan, we're paying 308. So that's not a $60,000 difference. So the way I looked at, and I clearly I have it wrong, but I thought the 660 was like a catch-up payment, because if Jason, if you retired next year, we haven't been paying in for you to get the higher rate. So I thought that was a catch-up payment, but then if we're at this new rate, presumably we're paying more every year because it's going to cost more for you all to retire. So I guess I can't believe it's so great that all we have to do is pay $60,000 more a year, and then that's it, because it looks like we have to pay a lot more than that.
It might be better to make sure that I am better prepared to address that. I want to make sure that I have the appropriate amount of information. I don't want to make promises that perhaps are not accurate. So what I would ask then, it would be that perhaps we table this until the next meeting. I'll garner some more information, and if need be, I can potentially see if we can have a representative of loggers present to help further interpret the data.
That would be really helpful. And may I ask more questions so that as you're gathering more data? So then my other question is, I know this is a big incentive for current employees, but if you had an employee leave saying, I want my retirement higher, or do they leave because they're not getting paid enough?
people leave for various reasons. And we seem to be hearing about this, which is why we're bringing it to you.
Okay.
And we're also hearing about compensation, but I think the board, for many years now, has a plan to address that, and we can only hope by going into the market and see how the market is performing, we can bring back some things for your consideration. At the same time, this is a conversation you all had last year. We're hearing that some communities are giving retention, bonuses, incentive, whatever they're calling it. They're doing a lot of it around us, but our city attorney is, his opinion, based on state statute, is that it's illegal to do. And, we've been through the audit process with the state auditor, so we don't necessarily want to go through that again, which is why the board is staying the course. So it's a combination. We're hearing various reasons for leaving, and these two are one of them.
Okay, and then my question I ask every time is, what are other communities around us doing, and what are their rates? And like, this isn't something that Linda came up with last year. Like when she did all the comparisons, this wasn't an issue she identified as something we should change. So I'm not saying we shouldn't change it, but I'm really curious what these other communities are doing and make sure that we're not just leaping ahead.
That information was in the initial compensation study that Linda did, how we are in comparison to our comparators, and we can pull that information for you next meeting as well.
Okay, super. Thank you.
See, you took my question.
Can I ask a quick question just to make sure I'm following correctly? So the loggers rate changes each year, but this would lock us in, if we approve this, for 2 years. There wouldn't be a year.
No, what I mean by the lock-in is once the plan has a structural change, then you're tied to that structural change for a period of 2 years. So we couldn't go back, revert back, or we couldn't add the rule of 80 or something like that until that 2-year span has been put into place.
But the loggers plan would still update each year.
Correct.
As it has been.
Yes.
That wouldn't change.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess that you'll come on back next meeting? Yeah, do you need us to?
No,
need
we'll just
action
bring it
from us?
back.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so I think we'll hear more about that at the next meeting. There's no new business. Item 10 on the agenda is citizen comments. Do we have anyone in the gallery, either virtually or, I'm not seeing anyone in the actual gallery, that would like to come forward for citizen comments? Okay, well, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Like how you've added
The flourish at the finish.